Thank you for having us here in your beautiful home.
My pleasure.
Wanted to chat with you about your origin story, how you got involved with Trinity Care in Providence.
One day in about 1992, a fellow neighbor and friend was here at our home, and she looked up suddenly and she said, "Would you and Jerry have a fundraiser for hospice?" And I said, "Yes. What's hospice?" And so she told us the whole story about how she got involved and how much she believed in it. And we said, "Of course."
Who's your friend?
Her name was Mildred Marks, and I called her the mother of hospice.
When Mildred Marks asked you to help support hospice and she told you what hospice was, what did she tell you?
That when people were in dire need and some were dying, there we were. Hospice was there to help. She just felt so strongly about it. And she was a person like us from back east, and you get pretty passionate. And a few months later, we had this wonderful fundraiser. I think there were about 400 people here that first day. It was on a Sunday, and we called it Sunday by the Sea. I believe we raised about $200,000 that day. We all left feeling we have to do this again. So that was the start of 11 years in a row that we had Sunday by the Sea here at our home. Then after my husband left, or I should say he was taken, I just decided I couldn't do it without him anymore. And a friend and neighbor, Carolyn Elliott, was kind enough to say that she would do it.
So your first real introduction to hospice was more of a soiree.
Then I went on to the board of directors, and I was the chairman of the board of directors for 19 years. That's a long time. Jerry was right next to me in all the hospice stuff. He believed as strongly as I did.
I'd like to hear about Jerry's journey through hospice. How did he get ill and what happened?
He had had a physical, which he had every year, and his doctor called him and said, "They made a mistake in the lab. I need you to come back and have your blood work redone." He went back, and it wasn't a mistake. He had developed a blood disorder, which we found out later was inherited. But it came on quickly. He went to a hematology oncologist in Orange County. And I always regretted that because I had relationships here in the South Bay with some of the best doctors. But he worked in Orange County. It was just easier for him to go to somebody at lunchtime. And so that's the one big regret I have in my whole life, really, is that that happened and I allowed it to happen. But that's what he wanted. He was happy, and he was a top doctor. He just wasn't like the ones at Little Company Mary. And so his last year he spent here. I just sat and talked to him, and I said, "I think we really need to have hospice, and when you're better, they'll throw you off. You can't be on it anymore." Did he believe me? I don't know, but that's what we talked about. And he knew Glen already, and he said, "That's fine." So they started coming to the house. I had met Glen originally at a fundraiser for Little Company of Mary. He was speaking, and I was really taken with him because the way he spoke, you just had to feel something. I told him from day one we were behind him, and whatever we could do to help, we would be happy to do. So that's how our relationship started. And I guess my commitment became more so when I got to know him a lot better. And I really would do anything to help the work he does because I admire what he does so much and how he does it. And Jerry lasted about another year, and he died here at home on hospice service. I remember it was a Sunday, and the nurse came very quickly, which really surprised me. I took her aside, and I said, "Did I really imagine it?" When they called me down that he was going, his face suddenly looked different. It looked like it did when I first met him. No wrinkle, no lines, and a little bit of a smile on his face, and his head was turned towards the ocean. And I asked her, "Did I imagine it?" And she said, "No, you didn't. But the time you go, a lot of people, you can see they're happy and things are better." And the fact that it was a Sunday was good because everyone came to help me. And they're still doing the same work, and we've expanded our services. We have more people because I think the need keeps getting bigger every year.
Well, that's remarkable, too, that the last couple of years of his life were at his home, surrounded by loved ones.
He said he would never leave here except being carried out, and that's the way it happened.
Yeah.
So all of his partners live in Orange County. They still do.
Can you share with me a little bit about Trinity Care and the roles that you have played?
I wanted to do more, and we were just really beginning then. It was just getting off the ground. And a couple of years later, when I was the board chair, Claire Tian came to me and she said, there's a need out there. We have to have children's hospice. And like everyone, I just looked at her and I said, hospice for children? She said, Jacky, there are so many sick kids out there, and there is not good service for them yet. So I said, okay, and I brought it up to the board, and at that time there were 13 of us. Now I presented what I had learned from her and told them how much we needed to start this. Every hand went up in the air that day, and that's how TrinityCare was started, TrinityKids Care.
So it didn't exist until that
It didn't.
kind of moment?
It didn't. And I think we're one of the only ones that's nonprofit that's approved by all the powers that be to have this service. And what we're doing now with Glen's help is trying to spread it to other places like Orange County that don't have programs like we do. We've come a long way. I used to call it the mom and pop hospice.
I had heard that, and I can't cite the exact number, but there are a certain number who are families, children who are on service right now.
Over 100.
There's way many people in need.
Oh, I'm sure.
So you have
Yeah.
100 plus kids, families on hospice.
They're sent to us from places like UCLA, Children's Hospital in LA, because most of them don't have a way to handle that. I've had a beautiful tour of Children's Hospital. It's like going to Disneyland when you check in there. That's what it reminded me of. And so there's nothing scary when the children first see it. The parents seemed lighthearted at the time because they knew they were getting this kind of help. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't seek the help because they don't want to admit that something is so bad. And there is something about hospice when people hear it, it scares them, and it shouldn't. It's a place that you're going to get help with loving care. People really need to know that they should seek out help because it helped the person who's ill. If you keep denying it and don't get the proper help, you can't handle it after a while. It gets to be too much for you. And it's not doing a service to your loved one. So I would say if you have doubts, you talk to your doctor and get some help. Don't be afraid.
Jacky, thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure too.